What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Reformed Reader, the channel where we review different forms of media through the lens of a Christian who is under the authority of the scriptures. My name is Josh, and today we're going to be doing a book review of Halo: The Fall of Reach. Now, before we jump into the review, let's go over what is this book about. While the brutal Covenant juggernaut sweeps inexorably through space, intent on wiping out humankind, only one stronghold remains: the planet Reach. Practically on Earth's doorstep, it is the last military fortress to defy the alien onslaught. But Reach's defenders have another, higher priority: to prevent the Covenant from discovering the location of Earth. Outnumbered and outgunned, the soldiers seem to have little chance against the Covenant, but Reach holds a closely guarded secret. It is the training ground for the very first super soldiers. Codenamed Spartans, these highly advanced warriors, specially bioengineered and technologically augmented, are the best in the universe. Quiet, professional, and deadly. Now, as the ferocious Covenant attack begins, a handful of Spartans stand ready to wage ultimate war. They will kill, they will be destroyed, but they will never surrender. And at least one of them, the Spartan known as the Master Chief, will live to fight another day on a mysterious and ancient artificial world called Halo. Alright guys, so the way I normally structure my reviews, I go over the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good being the things about the book that I enjoyed, the bad being the things that I didn't like so much, and these are preferential things like writing style, maybe a character narrative or the setting, those kinds of things. But then I go into the ugly, which is what could be some sin that is steeped into this work that might hold a Christian back from picking it up. And I break that down into 5 categories and I rate them out of 10. But before we get into there, let's jump into the good. What were some things about this book that I enjoyed? And there's quite a bit. Now, I want to preface this review by saying I am an avid Halo fan, at least the first 3 games. I grew up with these games. I absolutely loved the games. I loved the world building. I loved the lore. I love
carpet. I love desk.
Brick, are you just looking at things in the office and saying that you love them?
I love lamp.
I loved even the mystery and intrigue behind the lore. I loved just about everything within this world. So as someone that was a teenager when he was introduced to the Halo universe, and I was pulled into this universe, I really found quite a bit of escapism into this world. I remember turning on Halo 1 for the first time, because the first time I had ever played it was actually over at a friend's house. And I think the Xbox had been out for a few years, but he had asked if I'd ever played the Halo games. And I said no, because we were pretty much a strictly Nintendo household for quite a long time. And so when I got to play Halo for the first time, it was just revolutionary for me. So finally, I think that Christmas, our parents ended up getting us an original Xbox with the first Halo game. And I, to this day, remember playing that first level when you're trying to escape the spaceship and you end up landing on the Halo ring. And the first time you look at it, it was just awe-inspiring for a young 13-year-old kid. So when I had the opportunity as a young adult to dive back into that world, but then get to learn about the backstory of Master Chief and the Spartan program, I was all over it. And that's exactly what this book is. So in a nutshell, this book is sort of a prequel to the first Halo game. So this talks about the Spartan program, how it was developed, who was selected, and the brutality behind that selection process. And not only that, but then also the lack of humanity behind the Spartan program. It was just absolutely phenomenal. It was everything that I was looking for in the Halo universe. So getting to dive back into this world, especially after coming off the heels of the Halo 4 and maybe even Halo 5 games, which I was not a very big fan of, this was exactly what I wanted. I wanted more of what I got when I turned on that first game and you hear the theme music. You hear the Gregorian chant in the background. The first time you hear that, that's what it felt like when I opened this book. Now, it's been a while since I've read this book, so when I'm talking about the good, what did I enjoy? I absolutely loved learning more about the lore of the Spartan program and learning so much more about Master Chief himself. On top of that, learning that the Spartan program was not initially developed to fight the Covenant, because they did not know that the Covenant existed prior to this book. The Spartan program was actually developed to defend the government against a rebel faction, but then the Covenant show up. And so now obviously gears have to shift a little bit in order for them to defend themselves. And so we learn the Spartan program becomes really the first and last line of defense for humanity. So what did I like about this book? You start out learning about Dr. Halsey and learning about an adolescent Master Chief, an adolescent John 117, and not just him, but all of those that are in the Spartan program with him. And so these are young kids that are abducted by the government and then trained to be these super soldiers unwillingly. But then it explains how that bioengineering process takes place. It explains how the Mjolnir armor is invented and developed and even improved upon. It also explains why Master Chief behaves and acts in the manner that he does. So I absolutely love the lore. Obviously, I'm going to love the characters because you get Master Chief, you get Dr. Halsey, you get slightly introduced to Cortana, or maybe she was mentioned. Obviously, if you've played the first game, you know that's really where Chief is introduced to Cortana, but you do hear about the development of her. But then one of my favorite things about this book was learning about all of the other Spartans, and not just the ones that are in Chief's team, but the ones that are actively his opponents, or those that don't make it through the selection process or the bioengineering process. What did I like about this book? Setting, characters, plot, the lore, the world building, but this also has some very emotional moments. So when Chief's team succeeds, you're pumping your fist. When Chief's team fails, you're right down in the trenches with them. And then there are some heavy losses that take place in this book as well, and they land pretty heavy on you. And it's not just because you love the characters, but it's also because you realize that these are teenagers who are going through this. So there's a lot to love here. I'll say this: if you're a Halo fan and you haven't read this, pick it up. Do yourself a favor, pick it up, because it's a very short read, but man, is it packed full. Also, the pacing in this book is just phenomenal. I think there are times where it definitely slows down, but it's because it needs to. But we do see some pretty quick time jumps there, as far as, you know, from the time they pick Chief up to the time where he's trying to defend Earth against the Covenant forces. So there are some time jumps in between there, but it's not jarring. It lets you know what's going on. As a matter of fact, I think there are some of the chapter headings are almost like diary or journal entries, and so they give the date of what's going on, so you kind of know before you jump into, okay, so a couple years have passed here. So there's a lot to love. So this leads me to the bad. What are some things about this book that I didn't prefer? And if I'm being frank, the last time I read this, there was nothing in here that I didn't like. The bad, I would say there's zero, with one exception. And that is that, so our author, Eric Nyland, clearly was being directed by, I don't know if it was Bungie or Microsoft or who, when he was writing this story about how his narrative voice came through. I will say that his prose is very flat. Now, what I mean by that, it's clear, not that Eric Nyland is a bad writer or that the writing is bad in this book. It isn't, but it is very flat. And you can see that it's because of a directive given to Eric Nyland. And what I mean by that is he's not the only one that wrote novels in this universe, similar to the Star Wars books. And so I don't think he had as much freedom to maybe write with a certain prose style or to lean heavier in in his vocabulary. I think they wanted it to be a very flat book, so that way any Halo fan, regardless of their experience as a reader, can pick this up and really enjoy it. Now, I think that was really smart. I wouldn't say that I didn't enjoy the writing style, but the writing style is absent almost. So I don't want to say it's robotic, because that's not the appropriate term, but it is pretty flat. So if you're looking for flowery writing, you're not going to get that here really. So just know that before you jump into it. This is a novel about some really deep lore in a vast intellectual property. And so they being Microsoft, obviously, or Bungie, wanted to protect that intellectual property by making sure that it was not being influenced negatively by the writing style. But saying that, I'm not saying the writing is bad. I'm just saying that it's very flat. So because of that, if you love flowery writing, you're not really going to get that here. So as far as the bad goes, I wouldn't count that as a negative, but some people may. So just know that ahead of time. And so this leads me into the ugly. Betrayal. Now, what I mean by the ugly is what could be some sin that is steeped into this book that might hold a Christian back from reading it. And I break this down into 5 categories, starting with violence and brutality. Now, violence and brutality, I'm going to give a 7. Again, this is a Halo book, so it's going to be violent. It's going to be violent and brutal. Now, I will say that it tends to be pretty PG for the most part. There are a few instances where the violence and brutality is a bit elevated, and that's in part going to be when our characters are going through the bioengineering process. Now, if you're unsure and you're like, I don't really know what he means by that, you can actually look up this clip on YouTube from the Halo Reach trailer where the Spartans or those going through the Spartan program are being injected with the serum, and you can see what happens to their muscles. And so it goes into some pretty descriptive detail about what is going on with the biology and anatomy of our characters because of being turned into these super soldiers. And it can get pretty brutal. Not everybody makes it through. Also, there is a lot of violence here as far as they're grouping the Spartans up into teams, and the teams are having to face off against one another to complete certain tasks. Very military oriented. There are several times where obviously Master Chief shines quite a bit as far as his leadership goes. And so rather than cultivate that leadership by surrounding him with support, they actually exclude him in most things and make him fight as a lone wolf to try to break him, to see if he could be that true leader, that true hero that they need. Obviously, we know that does take place, but because of that, Chief has to suffer through some pretty violent and brutal attacks on him, not just physically but psychologically. Sometimes you see those negative actions be detrimental to his psyche. But for the most part, violence and brutality, I would say for the most part, the book isn't all that violent, especially considering it's a Halo novel. However, there are some brutal and violent moments here, so be aware of that. So this leads me into category 2, which is sexually explicit content. Now, sexually explicit content, I gave this a 2. Now, again, it's been a little while since I've read this, so I'm really giving this a 2 just to play it kind of safe. I don't remember there being anything sexually explicit whatsoever. The only thing that I would say leans towards anything that's sexually explicit is that it is a military complex, and the Spartan program is practically genderless. And what I mean is there's no segregation between the men and the women. They are all expected to perform at the exact same level equally, and they're on equal playing ground. And so because of that, they share everything. What I mean is they share barracks, they share food. It is a communal shower, those kinds of things. I don't think there's ever any kind of descriptors or anything like that, but just know that. Know that going into it. So I would say, is there anything sexually explicit in nature? No, there's not, but I will say there are allusions to things that are more explicit. And I don't mean that in a gratuitous way. I mean when they're referring to anatomy and those types of things. So that's why I gave it a 2. It's really just to play it safe, but personally I would probably give it lower, but just to be on the safe side, I gave it a 2. So this leads me into category 3, which is language. Now, language includes blasphemy and swearing. And so for language, I gave this a 6. Now, again, it's been a little while, but I don't remember there being much language in here. There is a little bit. Again, if you've played the Halo games, you kind of know what to expect. You're getting more of that just in literary form. So I would say there's not really a lot of language. And the only time you're going to experience any type of vulgarity or blasphemy, it's going to come from those outside of the Spartan program, or those that are conducting the Spartan program, and not necessarily those that are in the Spartan program. Because of those of us who love the lore and are steeped into this world, we know that some people refer to the Spartans as robots, and it's because they are emotionless, they're very flat, they're not really worried about civilian casualties all that much. They have a mission, and their goal is to accomplish that mission by any means necessary. So the language that you experience is going to come from Johnson or Dr. Halsey, or maybe some parents whose children have been abducted. But for the most part, you're not going to really experience any language. I think there were a few uses of OMG, but otherwise there's not really any heavy blasphemy in here that I can recall. So this leads me into category 4, which is gratuitous inclusions. Now, for gratuitous inclusions, I gave this an absolute 0. We deal with a diverse cast here. We deal with every gender, race, creed, and religion in this book. It's a very diverse cast. And the reason for that is because when they're going through the selection process of the Spartan program, there is no segregation. It is really just who is the most qualified physically, emotionally, and psychologically. So I will say there is a diverse cast here, but it is not gratuitous whatsoever. There's also no gratuitous relationships in here because there's no need. It's the Halo universe. And so there's no gratuitous relationships here whatsoever. I do want to put a pin in this and say that in the earlier Halo novels, I keep looking over here because I have them stacked over here, but in the earlier Halo novels, this being the first chronologically, and I think maybe even the first written, I do know that some of the writers can lean towards more of an inclusive cast. Now, I don't know what that means or what that looks like because I have not read those books as of yet, and so I don't know which books those are. But just know that if you're looking to get into the Halo universe, this is an excellent place to start, and it's marked, for me, it's marked safe as far as that goes. So this leads me into the last category, which is dark themes. Now, dark themes, I gave a 1. Now, the reason why I didn't give it a 0 is because there's not the absence of dark themes, but the reason I didn't give it higher than that is because the only theme that I would consider dark or heavy is what our Spartans are having to go through, the responsibility and burden that our Spartans have to carry, especially as young adults. Also, you're dealing with a little bit of kidnapping. Obviously, that's how the Spartans were chosen. They were chosen by the government, and then they were taken by the government. And there is no argument in this series. They get what they want. But then the real reason why I gave it a 1 is because you do have this sort of looming dread, which is our undercurrent of the story, because we know the Covenant's coming and we got to get ready. So I would say as far as dark themes, spiritually, there's not any, but as far as heavy themes, there are some that are touched on, that kidnapping, how children can be mistreated a little bit. But again, it's not gratuitous in nature. And so that's why I gave it a 1. So this leads me to the final question, which is, would I recommend this to a Christian? And the answer is absolutely, if you love the Halo universe. Now, if you're not a fan of Halo, I don't know why you'd be picking this up. As a matter of fact, I know that this video probably won't do exceptionally well, because if you don't like Halo, then why would you click on this video about somebody who read a book in that universe? If you did, thank you for watching. But if you don't like Halo, or you don't know that you like Halo, I don't know that I would recommend that you jump into this. But if you are like me and you loved the Halo games and kind of grew up with them and you haven't read this, do yourself a favor and read it, because I think you will absolutely love it. Also, you could read this and stop there and be perfectly content, to the extent of, this is one of only 2 times that ever in my life was I in the bookstore and I saw somebody that was selecting books, and a young man, he was probably in his mid to late 20s, And he had 2 books in his hand, and one of them was Halo: The Fall of Reach, and I don't remember what the other one was. And I heard him say to his girlfriend, I'm assuming, or his wife, whoever she was, I heard him say, well, I can only get one, so which would it be? And against my better judgment, I leaned over and I was like, hey man, if you love Halo and you've never read any of the books, do yourself a favor and pick this book up, because you will absolutely love it. And he just kind of looked at me for a second, and I thought I made a mistake, and he goes, thanks, man, I super appreciate it. And then so he did. He picked this book up, and I'd be willing to bet that he loved it. I don't know that for sure, but if he loves Halo and he read this book, I bet he absolutely loved this book, as would you. If you love the Halo games, particularly the first 3, and you want more of that, you want some more backstory rather than just Halo Reach, which was phenomenal, by the way, then I highly recommend you pick this book up, because it really goes into the details of Master Chief and his history. So would I recommend this to a Christian? Absolutely, if they love Halo, or if they even slightly enjoyed Halo. This is that sci-fi series that is a great palate cleanser. It's not very thick. I mean, this is a mass market paperback, and it's not even 300 pages. So there's not really a lot of investment here, and it's super fast paced. So it is absolutely engaging. Also, if you're not already an avid reader and you're like, well, I haven't read a book in a while and I'm looking for something to get into, this is a good place to start for Halo fans. So this is an excellent place to start, because you know that you already love that universe and that work, and so you just want a little bit more of it. This is a good place to kind of dip your toes in. So would I recommend this to a Christian? Absolutely. I would recommend this to any Christian who is also a fan of the Halo universe. If you're not a fan of the Halo universe, could you read this and have a good time? Absolutely. But you're probably going to be a little bit lost. So, I don't really know that I would actively recommend this to a Christian that does not already know this work pretty well. So guys, overall, I absolutely love this book. It's one of my favorite books of all time. It's definitely up there in the top sci-fi books that I've read. Absolutely loved every word. And I'm really looking forward to a reread pretty soon. So if you guys are interested in me doing any reviews of any of the other Halo books, leave a comment down in the comment section below, because I have read quite a few and I will get to them. But I thought this is an excellent place to start for any Halo fan that's looking for a good palate cleanse. Definitely pick this up, because to me it was fantastic. So I absolutely loved it. I think that you will too. If you love Halo and you love to read, this is the perfect combination here. So thank you guys so much for letting me come on here and ramble on about a book that I enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you on the next one.